Hey, it's a little weird, but we need to have a talk about your current research strategy. And this is coming from me, your friendly neighborhood Etsy data nerd. But we've all seen videos like this, right? The 5-minute videos that promise unlimited sales and overnight success if you just do this one thing. And sure, you and I both know that replicating the success in these videos isn't that easy. If it was, everyone would be super successful, and there'd be no need for people like me. But videos like this are actually doing more harm than good. And this isn't me coming from a competitive YouTuber standpoint, it's coming from the standpoint of an educator. When it comes to content designed to help you grow your business, it can be easy to fall into consumer envy. In a nutshell, this means that you watch short-form content from successful people who quickly attempt to explain how to be successful within the constraints of a short video. And as someone who creates content like this, I know better than most how addicting this content can be. Short-form video content is easy to consume and digest when you don't have a lot of free time. Short YouTube videos or even TikToks, Reels, and Shorts are all examples of this easy and digestible content. But as outlined in this amazing comic by the woke salaryman, short-form content can also be harmful to those on a mission for deep learning, simply because short content is too short to truly gain a full scope of understanding in a specific topic. In this comic, the artist describes understanding as digging into the earth. Digging into the first layers of Earth is super easy, and you may feel like you're making great progress. But as you dig further and deeper into more advanced layers, you find that these layers are harder. Sticking to the top layers of Earth can feel easy and safe. It's where most people spend their time, and it's where a majority of content is consumed because it's easy and satisfying. Not to mention, if you're a consumer of this content, it's very likely that your own YouTube algorithm is more likely to recommend more of this content to you, perpetuating this surface-level digging. A quick keyword search in vidIQ shows that the top related searches for Etsy on YouTube are questions like how to make money on Etsy, how to make more Etsy sales, and how to be successful on Etsy, which are all good questions, but none of these questions break past the surface and into a progressive state of deep learning. And by spending hours digesting these forms of content, you may feel like you've accomplished a lot because you've spent a lot of hours doing what you thought was research, but ultimately, you haven't walked away with a level of deep understanding, which is understandable. Deep learning is challenging. You may hit obstacles along the way that make progress feel slow. Instead of the instant gratification that you feel from watching quick tips, you're forced to spend time learning and putting more difficult skills into practice. If you're digging for success while only exploring shallow subjects, you ultimately end up having a shallow understanding of many subjects, as opposed to a deep understanding of a few specific subjects. In reality, a better approach to self-education looks more like this, where you've taken time to deep dive into a few specific topics. With this deeper understanding, you're more likely to apply more meaningful concepts to your business and growth. Practicing exploration of deep knowledge builds resiliency. It's akin to going to the gym and lifting weights. What once seemed heavy to you a few months ago now seems easy because you've built strength and resiliency over time.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
It gets easier.
Huh?
Every day it gets a little easier.
Yeah?
But you gotta do it every day. That's the hard part. But it does get easier.
Not to mention, having deep knowledge in one field can allow you to progress into other fields of deep knowledge with less difficulty. For example, if you build a deep knowledge of Etsy SEO, then later decide to start a website, you'll already have a base level of understanding to help make the deep learning of website SEO a little easier. And as someone who frequently explores deep learning, it can be extremely interesting while also leading to unique levels of problem solving. As an Etsy coach, I often spend time learning about human psychology and neuroscience. By understanding how the human brain works, I'm able to tie human behavior and cognitive biases into my methodology and teaching in order to cover subjects that no other educators in my field teach. And I make these connections on my own through an understanding of universal psychology that just happens to also apply to consumer behavior as well. My favorite slide from this comic outlines how deep knowledge can be humbling because it broadens your perspectives and allows you to view problems from an abstract angle. In most of my videos, you'll notice how frequently I outline disclaimers or use phrases like, "There's no real answer to that question." Not out of a lack of knowledge, but due to an overwhelming understanding of every scenario that could influence an outcome. How do you become more successful on Etsy? Well, it depends. How long does it take to become successful? Well, it depends. On what? It depends on so many different factors that I've spent over 10 years acquiring a deep understanding of. And unfortunately, there's no way for me to condense those years into a short comment that will accurately outline the question that you've asked. But I have a great list of in-depth videos on my channel that explore these specific topics like Etsy's algorithm, brand psychology, trend analysis. Yeah, but what's your top video to watch? The one that'll outline the most important steps I need to take to be successful? Well, it depends. As someone who actively practices deep learning, phrases like "I can't," "I don't know how," or "nothing is working" are all key indicators of an individual who has not yet reached a stage of deep learning. Because with deep learning comes the overall understanding that there's always more to learn, and the ultimate solution to overcoming any obstacle is evaluate that obstacle and to make adjustments in order to navigate around it, thus equaling more deep learning. Short-form content is a great way to discover topics that you were unaware of, but it's best to isolate those topics once you've gained an awareness. That way, you can focus on a more precise dig into that field. For example, if you were to watch a video on the top 10 tips to be a successful Etsy seller, and tip number 5 was learn Pinterest marketing, you could spend more meaningful time deep learning about Pinterest marketing through Pinterest courses and Pinterest workshops. After gaining this bit of deep knowledge, maybe you learn that quality of images is important for Pinterest, so you begin a new deep learning journey into the psychology of effective marketing imagery. In this scenario, one session of deep learning leads to multiple avenues of deep learning, which is exactly why my least favorite comment is, "I've tried everything and nothing is working." This statement is a personal declaration made by an individual who has reached a more difficult stage of deep learning, then has chosen to exit the hole, rather than branching out into other related areas of deep learning. A few areas of deep learning that I personally consume are books, audiobooks, podcasts, TED Talks, educational blogs, online courses, scholarly articles and case studies, documentaries, and yes, even YouTube videos that outline very specific topics rather than broad, flashy overviews. And it's not just the consumption of this content that matters, but also the retention of it. Even when reading the most interesting book in the world, it's unlikely that you'll remember every important point that you found interesting or useful, which is why note-taking is a deep learner's best friend. Yes, believe it or not, your middle school teacher was right. The effort required to take notes helps form new pathways in the brain and encode the information in a way that stores it better in your long-term memory. Even if you never review those notes again, you're more likely to remember the information you learned if you write it down. And reviewing your notes occasionally is a great way to save key points of information without having to reread a book over and over again. As an educator, the question of how can I be successful is not something I can answer, because I cannot bottle success for you in a way that only requires you to take one sip. What I can offer are a diverse number of business topics in multiple forms, including short form, long form, visual, written, scientific, and anecdotal. Because what I teach isn't a bottled beverage to sip. It's an ocean, and if you want to truly learn deeply, you must be willing to put on your scuba gear and dive in. It won't be fast, it won't be easy, and if you see it as a chore, it probably won't be fun either. But if you dedicate yourself to learning and you treat every day as an opportunity to swim just a little deeper, I promise you'll eventually discover exactly what you're looking for. Check the video description for a deep dive of all of my favorite topics related to Etsy. See you guys later.